My name is Aurora Clare. You might have seen some of my food writing on the AJHS blog, or maybe you've attended one of the programs that I've hosted here. And I'm a historian of 19th and 20th century American history. My work has dealt with histories of domesticity, identity, migration, politics. I love to cook, I love to bake especially, and I think that food history is a really great accessible entry point for all of us to have much broader historical conversations about culture and identity. And I'm here today to visit the archive, the cookbook archive, which is always such a treat. I'm here looking for kosher for Passover recipes, and I'm really excited. I can't wait to see what we find. Welcome to my kitchen. So the cookbook that stood out to me at the AJHS archive was So Eat My Darling, A Guide to the Yiddish Kitchen, which is the only cookbook I've ever seen that has a recipe author credit and a folklore credit. It was originally published in 1977. It is full of very 70s food photography, but it's also full of archival photography. There are a bunch of great historic photographs which actually came from the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research, which is housed at the Center for Jewish History alongside the American Jewish Historical Society. So that's a great archival connection that I really was not expecting to find. I was looking for a kosher for Passover recipe and I found one in the dessert section. I'll be making matzah meal blintzes today, which are kosher for Passover because rather than using any flour in the batter, they use matzah meal. A little blintz history. So the man credited with bringing blintzes to the United States, at least commercially, was a turn-of-the-century Romanian immigrant from Bucharest named Jacob Campus, who advertised Bucharester Blintzes as kind of the signature dish at his dairy restaurant at 64 Delancey Street, which was in business for 24 years before it closed 3 years after his death in 1916. Bucharester Blintzes was a bit of a rebrand of a stuffed pancake dessert called placinta. You'll have to forgive my Romanian pronunciation there, but that dish would be recognizable as a blintz and very similar in terms of taste and preparation. He started selling it as basically a Romanian blintz to appeal to his neighbors who might have been more familiar with that term. Because even within the Ashkenazic community of immigrants on the Lower East Side of Manhattan at the turn of the century, there were cultural differences, right? The Russian Empire is a big place. Eastern Europe is a big place. There were different regional foodways that people were bringing with them to the Lower East Side. And then what was developing there was a hybridized diasporic food culture, right? What Americans think of today as Jewish food actually comes from a variety of places, not to mention the foods that came with Sephardic immigrants, Mizrahi immigrants, German Jewish immigrants to the United States, right? So what we recognize today as a blintz is in no small part due to the advertising efforts of Jacob Campus, who actually advertised with the slogan, "Eat blintzes and get fat." So to prepare these blintzes, the steps are pretty similar to a standard blintz recipe. The biggest difference, of course, being that this dish is kosher for Passover, so we're using matzah meal instead of flour. The dough comes together in just one bowl, all the ingredients at the same time. That's going to be your 3 beaten eggs, your salt, matzah meal, and water. The amount of water you're actually going to need for this recipe is going to vary depending on a variety of factors. No matter what, matzah meal blintzes are going to be thicker than a standard flour-based blintz, but the waterier your dough is, the thinner your dough is when it goes into the pan, the thinner and more delicate that crepe is going to be able to be, which is what we're looking for any blintz recipe. The original 1977 recipe from So Eat My Darling calls for 1.25 cups of water in this batter, and I really found that that was not enough for the batter to spread easily around the pan and really yield that thin and delicate crepe that we're really looking for. So in my adapted recipe, I recommended that you actually start with 1.25 cups of water and you add water a tablespoon at a time as your dough or your batter sits in the bowl, depending on its thickness, in order to make sure that it is as thin and watery as possible. Once you've mixed up your batter, it's time to fry the crepe or the pancake for these blintzes, which we are going to do only on one side. The blintzes will get another saute or fry once they have the filling inside, so you're only cooking on one side of the pancake at this stage. The standard way to make a blintz would be to put your batter into the pan and immediately begin tilting the pan around to spread that thin and watery batter all the way to the edges of the pan. If you're able to get that technique to work with this, I salute you, but I was not able to get that dough to be quite as spreadable just from tilting my pan around. And the technique that I found worked for me was actually to put that third of a cup or so of batter into the pan and then begin spreading it around kind of manually with an offset spatula, which is one of those thin spatulas that you would use for cake decorating usually. This allows you to spread that batter around the pan quickly and also to fill in any cracks or gaps just by spreading a little raw batter into the gap with that offset spatula. And you're going to be frying these in butter or margarine, your choice of fat, and again, just on one side until lightly golden brown. Now you're ready to assemble the filling. So the filling is cream cheese based. So soften half a pound of cream cheese, which is 1 block of cream cheese, and mix that together with sugar, salt, and 1 more beaten egg. This filling is really not too sweet. It's only 1.5 teaspoons of sugar, and that's going to allow you to customize your blintzes into savory or sweet depending on what you prefer. I recommend putting this together with an electric mixer, whether that's a hand mixer or actually making this in a food processor or blender, I think would work really well. If you are going to use the hand mixer technique the way that I did, I recommend sort of mushing these components together a little bit just before you go in with that hand mixer. Even softened cream cheese sometimes is a little stiff, and when you're mixing it with a beaten egg, you don't want that egg to splatter everywhere. So mix it together with a spoon or a fork a little bit before you go in with that hand mixer, and then mix until everything is smooth and sort of custardy in consistency. And then you're ready to assemble the blintzes. To assemble, take one of those blintz wrappers, again, cook side up, and place 1 heaping tablespoon of your filling into the center of the blintz, and then wrap it up like a little burrito, again with that uncooked side facing out. You're gonna do this for all of your blintzes, and then they are ready to go into the pan one more time to become golden brown and saute in the last of that butter or margarine, depending on what fat you used. Sauteing or frying these blintzes should take about 3 minutes on each side, just to make sure that they are nice and golden brown. The heat from the pan here, sauteing the outside of this blintz wrapper, is going to cook that beaten egg that's in the middle in that filling. So you don't have to worry about any raw egg or consuming any uncooked egg here. It is going to take care of it with the heat from that pan, trust me. For a savory blintz, you can garnish this with a dollop of sour cream. Yes, you should put dairy on your dairy here. And for a sweet blintz, you can put on a little dusting of powdered sugar or some honey. I did both and it tasted delicious. Blintzes are best served warm, so dig in and enjoy. You can read more about Jacob Compass and dairy restaurants of the Lower East Side in the blog post that I wrote for the AJHS blog this month.